My sincere apologies. Technical difficulties. Let's try this one more time. Now, you see here my post from today, and I will show this because it's relevant. I've been dealing with this hate cult now for probably 2017, 2018. So that would be approximately how many years now? About approximately 7 to 8 years. And for most of that time, especially since October 2021, I have been subjected to a ridiculous pedophile slander campaign. Yet, interestingly, a lawyer, Rob Reed, keeps sticking his foot in it. So, since he made a bunch of erratic posts attacking me, and since he is stalking the dickens out of me, I thought I would present some questions, and I will try to leave those questions, if I remember, below in the comments section because I'm sure he'll be more than happy to answer them. I doubt, though, that he will. His threats recently have been to try to that he's going to strike my archive, the Super Troll archive, away. Yeah, I don't think so. And this is 7 reasons why. We'll take a look at him, but see what's interesting about Rob is that he went on a public live stream, his own live stream, lied and said, well, my bar license was suspended. I can't practice law. Number 180972 on the CalBar, CALBAR dot, I think it's a dot .org or dot .gov website, I forgot which, does not show any disciplinary action. So that was a lie. He followed this on with, and I got a subpoena. That's going to lead to some interesting questions in its own right. But that seems to me, based on the erratic posts and his reaction to this, to highlight that, yes, in fact, Consul Reed probably did receive a subpoena and he is now violating a gag order. But we'll get into that. You cannot so easily take down the content that's on the Super Troll archive. And here are the 7 reasons why. Pause and read it if you feel like it. But I think you can see what I'm talking about. So let's switch to a different tab. Let's see. Here is said lawyer in question. Now, desperate to get out of this, and very intimidated by my legal acumen that he has already complimented backhandedly, he has decided that he is going to continue harassing me. Now, typically, I don't reply to him, but I find it interesting what he is doing, and it is, well, useful to document the things that he says. ChatGPT is not a suitable source for legal advice. I don't use ChatGPT, and I don't think AI is suitable as a source for legal advice, because the courts have already ruled that you can't hire an AI lawyer. Sure, you might be able to use AI to, I don't know, set up your legal briefs, or maybe to prepare documents. They might not mind that, but typically the courts don't like that. And I don't have a law license. I don't pretend to be a lawyer, unlike some people who, though they might actually be a lawyer, almost never practice law, and it shows. In retort to my post you just saw was this. The worst of lawyers only do workups of their case by looking at it under a biased lens. In the layman potato narcissist, potato means pedophile, referring to me, who wants to play lawyer on the internet, who makes this so blatantly obvious. No, I and others, and some of them are probably in the chat, I haven't looked, like Mac and Cheese, like Beckel, like Dave Connell too, like many others, are victims of this hate cult with which Rob Reed is directly associated and has legally advised for years. So, a 1-minute Google search not recommended for real legal analysts, but expected by the pretenders on YouTube, resulted in the toppling of Ryan's House of Cards argument number one. And whistleblowing is a defense to a YouTube video public reposting copyright infringement. My goodness. He links here to a case, and I'll get into that. It was called MPAA versus Zhongli, which was a Chinese company. Now, what was interesting is one, a JNE investigation is not what he's presenting it to be. So he's lying once again about that. And two, this post about a week ago was very, very interesting, along with this one. Schadenfreude, a very unchristian sentiment, is easier to control when you're also the recipient of misfortune. Huh. Why would you feel Schadenfreude if, of course, you didn't receive a gag order with a subpoena implicating you with the hate cult? Could be wrong, but seems to indicate that. And then this next post, but requires that I ignore the retardation. I think this means in German, stick true to your principles, requires that I ignore the retardation. Well, of course, because a gag order requires you to gag yourself. You cannot say anything to anyone except legal counsel, except the cops, except to the judge. You can't communicate at all if you're under a gag order. I'm not. So I think you perhaps get the background. So let's now go to share this tab instead and see if I got anybody watching. Oh, good. Glad y'all can hear me. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Here are my questions. 1. Rob Reed's bar association number is 180972. His profile shows no disciplinary action for now. If Reed lied about a suspended law license on his live stream, doesn't that also mean he's willingly violating a gag order based on posts not to engage in retardation, his words, or Schadenfreude, his words? He feels from others his hate cult associates misfortune over a subpoena. A subpoena is basically the document saying, hey, we're looking into you. We need you to tell us about this. We need you to explain your behavior. We need you to give documents, testimony, whatever, and you must respond. For a lawyer, it's typically customary. It's standard practice. 2, is Rob Reed more concerned in spreading a narrative such as he did with Thick Shades, a Korean pornographer and doxer, he claimed, Smokey Saint, alleged sex offender, and Reed threatened to release Satori, the victim's case file, which he claimed to have in going after Smokey Saint, and then leaked details of the case he allegedly acquired from a law school buddy of his, or myself. Now, Thick Shades, although I do not stick up for him, did indeed own numerous porn domains. And it was Rob Reed in about 2011 or 2010, which I have on the archive, among other people, including the Mimic Arises, who sussed that out of Thicky. Now, again, the moral question as to whether or not somebody ought to own those domains is a separate question from the legal question. Is it legal for someone to own a bunch of erotic domains? Yes. Is it moral? Is it a separate question. For a Christian, is it moral to own porn domains? No, I don't think it is. But that doesn't make it illegal. What likewise is illegal would be to then find out those domains and stalk someone for a decade plus who owned those domains. And then, of course, he's going to say, well, Thick Shades doxed me. Thick Shades doxed a number of people. I'm not justifying his behavior, but I wonder, could he have done that because he was having pictures of his family uploaded because his legally owned domains, which none of these people will morally condemn anymore, were under the harassment from this guy, domains that, I mean, he just kept bringing up year after year after year from 2015 onward, 2011 onward. So is he more, what does that say about Rob Reed? It seems like he's more interested in spreading a narrative rather than taking action. I mean, after all, if you get doxxed, your private information like your home or your address, things like that, start appearing on the internet, private messages, whatever, then you've had the privacy expectation violated. You have damages. So why not pursue thick shaves at that point? But he didn't. With Smokey Saint, way back in the day, he was accused of being Joshua Bell, who was a sex offender who had to go to the federal courthouse. The older guys will remember this, the newbies have no idea. But what was strange about that case is while there was a trip to the courthouse with old Smokey, what they never proved was that he was guilty. They never truly corroborated that. It was based mostly on circumstantial evidence. And if Smokey weren't guilty, whether or not he was guilty, allegedly, then what does that say about you threatening on a live stream to release the case file, the sealed case file for a victim? Usually, in those sorts of cases, the victim is charged and the aggressor, the attacker. But the victim usually has their case file sealed because of the nature of the crime, if it was of a sexual nature, and to protect their identity. Even if that person becomes 18, it is extremely unethical and highly illegal to threaten to read a file that he allegedly acquired from his old law school classmate. Moving on. In MPAA versus Junli Networking Technologies, the question in the case was about the defendant illegally uploading copyrighted material, piracy. In the link he gave, it was the Motion Picture Association versus this Chinese social media company that had uploaded to their streaming services a bunch of copyrighted content. That is a clear case of piracy. And it was something to the effect of 24,000 legal fees, 210,000 in damages. How much copyright law did Mr. Ambulance Chaser practice, since the lion's share of his caseload are predetermined payouts like accidents, insurance claims, slip and falls, and so on? He claims to be a lawyer. He claims even to be a copyright lawyer. And we'll get into my subpoints in just a second. But if you have piracy, that is different. Now let's explain why. A, the copyrighted content, or the content of the films, or the content of the copyrighted films, where the MPAA on its behalf of its members could show damages from stolen royalties. The MPAA's argument would basically be, hey, we represent all these actors, these directors, these producers, these celebrities who participated in the making of this film. Their copyrights are in the film, their voices, their faces, their likenesses. And this entity, which in this case would have been Junlei Networking, uploaded this without consent to their website in China. Very cut and dry piracy case, because the royalties that the actors, producers, directors, and MPAA ought to receive, they're not getting. Clear damages. B, none of those films are in the public interest to record over a decade of criminality from a dangerous hate cult, nor were they evidence in an investigation. The Super Troll Archive and Dave Connell 2's archive are. Recording the actions of a hate cult and its associates is in the public interest because people like Stefan, people like Mac and Cheese Life, like myself, like Dave Connell 2, like Kevin's Biblical Discussions, people like Dave the News Unit, and so forth, are being slandered and attacked by this radical hate cult. The Dude, Praise, Olive, Rob Reed, GY6, Bill Cuthbert, the main hate preacher, Jack Smack, and so forth. Brucifer. That means, actually, the public needs to know what's going on here. How much copyright law does Counselor Reed truly understand? You'd think for a lawyer that he would know clearly there's a large number of people being damaged here. The public, therefore, has an interest in seeing the evidence, in recording the evidence, and reporting the evidence of criminality. C. Ergo, is Rob Reed once again attempting to obstruct justice by threatening to have content hosted in Canada, where Rumble is located, removed? The Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which is the U.S. copyright law, does not apply in Canada. They have their own copyright law. The United Kingdom has their own copyright law from 1988. Though a court could apply U.S. law, that raises some other questions, and we'll get into that momentarily. D. Is he further demonstrating unclean hands and bad faith, meaning that he wants to take legal action against me, but he's doing so while in the process or having committed illegal activity, like participating in a hate crime? And I have logged dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of human rights violations or hate crimes, of obstruction of justice instances, and so forth. Preventing himself and his cohorts from seeking legal redress. Bad faith means by using my full name in his latest streams, by calling me a spud, which means potato, by insulting me. It's very clear Reed's motive to have the archive scrubbed is to prevent himself from going to prison and facing justice. 4. Since the two archives in question are in the United States and United Kingdom, if such a suit is filed, which jurisdiction takes precedence since Rumble is located in Toronto, Canada? What laws should the Canadian courts, even if they heard such a case, apply? US, UK, or Canadian? Dave Connell is in the UK. I'm in the US. And the archives are two different channels on Rumble located in Canada. Are the Canadians going to apply US law? Will the US apply Canadian law? Because you can't get it removed from here. You have to initiate legal action there, and you have to convince a US court first that you can take legal action, then convince the Canadians to take legal action. When, let's assume that they did, for example's case, are they going to use Canadian law to prosecute someone in the UK? Are they going to use US law to prosecute someone in the US? Are they going to apply Canadian law? Well, that remains to be seen, and not a lawyer doesn't get to dictate to them who gets to do that. 5. By admitting I have advanced legal acumen, which you saw a moment ago from his community tab, hasn't Reed conceded that he is utterly incompetent? In the 7th and final point of my post this morning, I stated, and I'll show that again, share here. 7. The fact that a layman has to educate a lawyer demonstrates gross incompetence, raising legitimate inquiry about his soundness to practice law. So coming here again, share this tab instead. By saying that I did my legal research on ChatGPT, or by saying that I don't know what I'm talking about, despite the fact that I am demonstrating for a layman to have far more legal knowledge than I should have, doesn't that mean that Reed, who's been practicing law since 1995, is incompetent? The final one is pure speculation. I admit that. I'm not saying it's true or untrue, but I'm prefacing it as such. Oh dear, someone is texting me. Hold on just a moment while I mute that. Of course, people start contacting me while I'm busy and try to distract me with ridiculousness as a course. Oh, I don't know. I'm busy. Speculation. Did Reed become a lawyer due to potential stipulations in a trust so he could receive the millions his parents won in the lottery? Yet since 1995 has only practiced enough law to satisfy that he is a lawyer. Half of this question I ask because I noticed his motives do not seem to convey someone interested in pursuing legal action. I mean, after all, the attorneys I know that if they got slandered would sue the dickens out of that person without a second thought. But since Rob is so unfamiliar with very basic case law, and his caseload usually only reflects predetermined payouts, ambulance chaser, that's why I call him that, such as slip and falls, accidents, car wrecks, then what kind of law has he practiced since 95? How does he not understand this? I'm supposed to be the layman here. I'm not supposed to understand this stuff. You shouldn't look at me for legal advice because I can't give it to you. I'm not a lawyer. So, exactly why did he become a lawyer? And did he do it just to satisfy alleged stipulations in a trust? I don't know that, but it's perhaps something he can clarify. And with that said, thank you all for watching.